Okay, then predicting Jacksonville Jaguars record prediction. So looking at their roster definitely is not super talented. It's similar to last year, but slightly worse actually. Now that I think about it, Trevor Lawrence, obviously he's Mr. Hype. People always expect a big year from him, but I'm not a huge fan of Trevor Lawrence. Our skill position players are not great. Travis Etienne is a good running back, but their wide receivers are really lacking. Christian Kirk I like, but he's not really a number one guy. They're really relying on a rookie and Brian Thomas to bring up their wide receiving core. I'm not a fan of that. Their offensive line actually should be better than last year, especially bringing in Mitch Morse, but like I said, bringing in a lot of new pieces on the offensive line usually takes a lot of time to gel. And their defense, they're really missing that superstar on defense. Their secondary, their defensive line looks solid, especially getting Eric Armstead pairing up with Josh Allen. But secondary, I'm slightly concerned with. That was kind of a liability last season. But you have your first game versus the Dolphins. Not liking this matchup at all. The only advantage I think the Jaguars have is that both Dolphins pass rushers will probably will start the year on PUP. But other than that, I don't trust the Jags secondary versus those Dolphins wide receivers, nor do I trust those linebackers versus the Dolphins running backs. So I'm going to take the Dolphins here. You have week 2 versus the Browns. Browns, they do have a very tough defense, but only at home. On the road, I think Jacksonville Jaguars offense can get it done. I think their defensive line can cause trouble for Deshaun Watson, so I'm taking the Jaguars here. And you have them versus the Bills. Last year the Jaguars upset the Bills. I don't see that happening again on prime time. Bills are coming off essentially a mini bye. Um, Bills even losing Stephon Diggs. I think the Bills defense will suffocate Trevor Lawrence and stop Travis Etienne in his tracks. So I'm gonna take the Bills here. And you have them versus the Texans. Jaguars usually play the Texans really well, but Texans will be on a flamethrower early in the season. I believe the Texans defense will improve and do well versus that Jaguars offense. I gotta take the Texans here, especially with those concerns with the Jaguars offensive line. I'm gonna take the Texans. And you have them versus the Colts. Similarly, Jaguars play the Colts really well, especially at home. The Colts haven't beat the Jaguars in Duval in forever, so I'm gonna take the Jaguars here. You have week 6 versus the Bears, a really long trip. I think the Bears defense has improved. I think Caleb Williams will do well versus that Jaguar secondary. I think this one's a good matchup for the Bears wide receivers, so I'm going to give it to the Bears here. And you have them versus the Patriots. Patriots still a rebuilding team. I gotta take the Jaguars. They're just the more established team right now, especially the Patriots having Jared Mayer. I'm gonna take the Jaguars here. Then you have them versus the Packers. This one I think could be a very interesting game. I could definitely see the Packers winning. I can definitely see the Jaguars winning. Jaguars do have home field advantage, and I don't know. This one's going to be close. I think this one's going to be a toss-up. I'm going to take the Jaguars here. I think Josh Allen can wreak havoc. Then you have them versus the Eagles. Um, Eagles to me are just too talented of a team. That defensive line can cause problems for Trevor. We know Trevor doesn't do well under pressure, and that Eagles offense is really good. Even during their collapse last year, they were still decent. So I'm taking the Eagles here. Then you have them versus the Vikings. Vikings, similar to the Patriots, still rebuilding. I know people are hyping up the Vikings a little bit. I really don't see it. As long as Trevor can get away from that blitz, which I do believe he can, that Jaguar offense should do just enough. And I don't trust the Vikings offense at all, so I'm taking the Jaguars here. Then you have them versus the Lions. Lions, they're a Super Bowl contender right now. Jaguars don't have the firepower on offense nor on defense compared to the Lions. I'm taking the Lions, especially with home field advantage. Then you have them versus the Texans. Like I said earlier, Jaguars play well against the Texans. Jaguars are coming off a bye. I'm taking the Jaguars here. You have week 14 versus the Titans, a divisional game. These guys usually split. I believe though the Jaguars will be looking for revenge after the Titans knocked them out of the playoffs last year. Titans definitely improved. Bringing in guys like Calvin Ridley, their defense should be at least average, but I don't trust Will Levis, so I'm taking the Jaguars here. Then you have them versus the Jets. Not a huge fan of the Jets. This one's going to be a real defensive match. Jets late in the year, I can't trust them. Jets defense I like. I think Jets defense can shut down Trevor Lawrence, but I believe that Jaguars defense, Josh Allen, can torment Aaron Rodgers. So I'm taking Jaguars here, especially with home field advantage. Week 16 versus the Raiders. Similar story to the Jets, but I think the Raiders have just as good defense, and the Jaguars are on the road this game, so I'm taking the Raiders here, upsetting the Jaguars. Then Week 17 versus the Titans, I don't believe the Jaguars are going to sweep the Titans, and I believe again this year the Titans will knock the Jaguars out of the playoffs. They usually split, and I think Will Levis will have one of his best. Will be kind of inconsistent, so I'm taking the Titans here. Then Week 18 versus the Colts, I do believe that the Jaguars will sweep the Colts. I like the Colts as a team, but their defense is really scary, and Colts don't play that well versus the Jaguars, so I'm taking the Jaguars here. So ending at the Jaguars going 9-8, 4-2 in the division, 7-1 at home, and 2-7 away.